Hello, fellow fantasy sports fans. Welcome to MFSN, the Hub's Fantasy Baseball Draft Show, Thursdays at 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific. I'm Dr. Dan Ratner, and I'm here as always with Casey, Vlad to the Bone Scheinvold, and Ross the Boss.
Hey everybody, Ross the Boss coming live from La La Land. We're talking pitchers, and that's this category that everybody takes for granted, I think. I mean, what's your opinion, guys?
Well, people do tend to, I think, rank hitters higher for there's various reasons for it and some strong arguments. I don't know that I would say they're taken for granted entirely. Casey, what would you say?
I don't know if they're taken for granted. I just don't think
what they are is hard to rank.
Actually. Yeah, I think that we don't take it for granted. I don't think we trust them as much because of the injury possibilities with Tommy John and a sore shoulder or a elbow issue. It seems like there's just so much more variability in ranking a pitcher because, like Kevin Gossman, for example, we're going to talk about him today at some point, I'm sure. I have him in my top 3 at this point, but
he's down and he's hurt, Casey Scheinfold.
Well, that's what I mean, but he's down with shoulder fatigue. So now all of a sudden, does that drop him out of the top 10 even? But the guy's been a stud for 3 years running. So yep. I think that's why it's an issue.
So, we've done all of our hitters hitting previews. I do agree with you, Ross, though, that people tend to gravitate towards the hitters more. Some of that is because hitters can be 5 category players. A starting pitcher is going to be 4 categories. No matter what, it's less categories.
At most, yeah.
At most, because they're not going to get saves in a typical 5x5. They also can get injured more, and they don't come back from injury very fast either. So if they're coming in injured, somebody like Gausman, you'd be much more likely to take a safe hitter. But let's get right into it, guys. We're going to rank our top 30 pitchers. So we got a lot of ground to cover. We're going to do sleepers, busts, and value picks. Ross, let's just start with you. Let's give us your top 5, your top 5 starters in the order you have them.
Top 5. I mean, I have it kind of in tiers. Let's say the top tier, you can flip-flop these guys. I have Strider as 1 just because his strikeout percentage is so high. He's younger than Cole. He's on a better team than Cole. Sorry, it's Casey Scheinfold. So I have Strider 1, but Cole's a close first because he plays on a team that usually wins. He's also a guy that won the Cy Young last year. So
and he does.
Those are my top 2.
He does it all really well. It's not.
Yeah, I mean, those are my top 2.
I have those as my.
You guys agree or disagree?
I agree. Yeah, I have them as my top 2. I have Garrett Cole 1 and Strider 2, but it was very close. And I
have Strider 1 and Cole 2 just because the 281 strikeouts last year. I mean, 13 point something per 9 innings is ridiculous.
Yeah.
And I tend to believe when I'm looking at starting pitching that the best indicator of whether they're going to be a success is strikeouts because WHIP, ERA, and wins can be very variable, right? Like you can be a great pitcher on a terrible team and you're not going to get wins. You can give up some soft contact here and there and your WHIP is affected. You can have, like strikeouts to me are no matter what everything else that's going on your team, if you can strike guys out, you're going to be more successful.
Well, I partially agree with you. I look at strikeouts and WHIP together. These pitchers need to have both. If they have both of those things in spades, those are the kind of pitchers I want.
Sure.
And that's where I gave Garrett Cole a little bit of an edge. It's close, and I can understand picking Strider ahead of Cole easily with those strikeouts. But I have them 1 and 2 flip-flopped. So I agree with you also, Ross, that's the first tier. Take us to the second tier.
Second tier is 3. I'm taking Zach Wheeler. He just signed a huge deal, guys. I mean, he's making a lot of money. He plays on a great team in Philadelphia, who I think they can beat Atlanta in the East. I think both teams will be in the playoffs, but I think Philadelphia, they're hitting and they're pitching, and I love the rotation. I love Zach Wheeler. He strikes people out too, so I have Zach Wheeler as 3. 4, I'll go with the Baltimore Oriole, the new one they signed, Corbin Burns. He's been solid. I think a new atmosphere is give him a great run there in Baltimore, and they have some really young hitters. I think he'll get some support. And number 5, I'll go off the chart a little bit. I'll go with Pablo Lopez of the Twins. I know Casey. I know he's been hurt. I know it's every year he gets hurt, but this year I think he'll put it all together. And I think I just feel that this guy's going to make a run for the Cy Young. I mean, he's that good. I mean, those are my top 5.
I mean, he put it all together last year. He pitched a full season, 194 innings pitched.
200.
I think the year before he was hurt, and the year before that he got hurt. So and he was an ex-Marlin. So now he's
I'm just saying. I think he's arrived a season earlier than you were expecting. In terms
so I like Pablo Lopez. So those are my top 5. What do you guys think?
I have Lopez at 8, but I could easily put him in the top 5. I'm not arguing. I think he's part of that second tier. Like I said, I had Gossman 3 only until I hear about.
I'm just worried about his health, Casey. I'm just worried about his.
But that's what I mean.
Coming out of spring training already, he's shut down.
If he's dealing with some shoulder fatigue, if he's going to miss the start of the season, obviously he's going to drop down. But 237 strikeouts, a 1.18 whip, like crazy good numbers. I have Wheeler 4. I agree with you. I think Wheeler is the most underrated pitcher in baseball. Like you don't hear about him that often as one of the premier aces in the league, and he really is. I think he's still snake bitten by how inconsistent he was with the Mets before he went to the Phillies, but he's been dynamite there. I have Burns 5th in Baltimore. My only concern is there going to be an adjustment issue there? The thing he's got going for him is, they moved the left field fence out like 25, 28 feet a couple years ago. So it'll be a much better pitcher's park for him than he was used to in Miller Ballpark or whatever they call it now in Milwaukee. But I agree with you. I could easily have put Pablo Lopez into that top 5.
It's so interesting,
guys. It's very close. It's very subjective. I'm just being honest.
It is.
And can we call Wheeler Bobby Wheeler because I'm a huge fan of Taxi. I just rather call him Bobby Wheeler. So
sure.
A little nickname. Okay, good.
But I wanted to say, as you guys were talking, it reinforced this point about how hard pitchers are to rank. My rankings are very different than yours in a lot of ways, but we're still talking about a lot of the same guys, but they're bouncing all over the place. My top 5 are Garrett Cole, Spencer Strider, and by the way, Garrett Cole's there because if you look at his whip with his strikeouts, it is
0.98 is
it
crazy.
Is much more elite than Strider. So I just felt
safer. But Strider has more strikeouts overall. The strikeouts
100%. 100%. It's a coin toss between the two. After that, I have Zach Gallen 3rd. I think the guy is just lights out. He's dominant across the board. I feel safer with him than others. My number 4 is Kevin Gausman. I have some worries about the injury, but it's shoulder fatigue. You get this a lot when people come into spring training. So it's not exactly an injury per se, as I see it, based on what I've seen.
Yeah, but it's a dead arm. We call it a dead arm, and it's
but people
have that in spring training is not good. I mean, it's not good.
But if he ends up missing the first week of the season or misses the first 2 starts of the season, he's still a top 5 pitcher.
Let me ask you this: if you hear shoulder fatigue versus forearm strain, which one do you want to hear? Forearm strain is going to end up.
Oh, that's worse. Yeah, that starts with the
strain is always worse. Yeah.
All right, we've got a question coming in from Tony. Any advice for a total newbie? I draft March 15th. We got plenty of advice for you, Tony.
Oh,
let's chime in. We'll each pick one thing to say.
I'm going to ask you 2 questions, and then we'll offer advice. A, what kind of draft? Is it an auction draft or a snake draft? And 2, how many teams are in the league?
Yeah, let's get those questions first, Tony. Yeah.
How many categories?
Actually, I was going to say, my first piece of advice is, do you know your league rules? And do you just understand how the game works? Because if you're like, oh, this player is a great player in regular baseball, but you don't understand that he doesn't steal bases, for example, then you need to know how players are valued. So my number 1 piece of advice is go look at the player rankings in your league based on the settings and just see who's valuable. That's one of the first things you need to find out. Come back to us, Tony, with information about your league. How many teams is it? What kind of draft is it? And we'll give you more information. Okay.
Now, and also on Yahoo, they offer practice drafts too. I suggest you do a few of those practice drafts
head to
see how you do.
Yeah.
It's a head-to-head league.
Okay, I have Corbin Burns 5th. He was my final of the 5th.
I have him 5th.
Okay.
So
Zach Gallen, let's go back to Zach Gallen real quick. Zach Gallen, when people hit him, they hit him hard. I mean, he gives up home runs. He gives up when they touch when he gets he gets lit up. I mean, he really does. But I like Zach Gallen. I just don't think it's a top 5 pitcher. Obviously, Arizona is one of the top teams in the league. They made it to the World Series last year. But Zach Gallen just makes me nervous because he does get hit hard at certain times. That's the only thing I got to say about Zach Gallen.
It may be, but he does everything you need him to do.
Yeah, he's
and on top of that,
inning.
he was the 6th best pitcher in baseball according to stats.
1.12 whip, so he might get hit hard, but doesn't get hit a lot.
Right.
Exactly. No, I mean, again, I'm a fan of his, but that's why I didn't have him in the top 5.
Okay, so we've got a 12-team. It's Tony's league is a 12-team head-to-head league.
Head-to-head.
All right, so let's give him some advice for 12-team leagues. One piece of advice I will give you is I would go for hitters on the early side. Don't wait too long on pitchers, but you want to get your elite hitters in there that are 5-tool guys. Get players who do everything for you, and hitters can do more than pitchers because they got 5 categories.
And my piece of advice is if you're deciding between a couple players, well, A, look at their track record, see who's been more consistent over a few years, but B, don't discount position eligibility. If a guy qualifies at 3 different positions and another guy only qualifies at 1, the 3 different position guy is much more valuable because it allows you flexibility in where you put him on your team and allows you to draft based on just pure talent later in the draft.
Yep.
And
now we've got Uncle Ted is joining us.
Draft Wando Franco. Don't draft Wando Franco.
Don't draft players that are not going to play baseball ever again. Uncle Ted, good to see you. This is our league mate. We're starting our league tonight. Uncle Ted has joined us. He says, "What up?" And then he says, "What?" And then he says, "Up." And then he says, "Championship, baby." I think he's very excited. He says
he's already predicting.
He's
already planning.
He's ready to steal our money, he says. So we've gotten into the top 5. Who's your second 5? And then we'll round out the top 10.
Okay.
So, guys, quick question. Who led the majors last year in walks percentage, the least amount of walks given up percentage-wise? Who was it? Go.
Least amount of walks.
I'm going to guess it was
Blake
Snell.
No, I would think that would be the most.
No, he's my number 6. So George Kirby.
Maybe?
George Kirby.
Kirby, we call him Kirby Vacuum Cleaner because Kirby vacuums. He's my number
Kirby
6. I think if you look at the pitchers in Seattle, their starting pitchers with Castillo,
it's an
Kirby,
outstanding.
Wu,
it's an amazing.
They have a great staff there in Seattle. No one's talking about it except Ross the Boss.
No,
but,
I was noticing that they have the number 11, 13, and 15 pitcher on my list.
Yeah, I mean, and their hitting's not as strong as some other teams, but I get it. But they do have Julio Rodriguez, who I do love. Hopefully, I can get him in our draft tonight. So Kirby's 6, guys. Castillo. I have Castillo as 7. I'm going with 2 Mariners, 6 and 7. Is that crazy? Or is that crazy?
It's not so crazy. I mean, I don't have it that way, but go ahead, Casey.
And then yes, I have Gossman. I just dropped him a little bit because the old fatigue thing makes me a little nervous.
Yeah, but see, that's the thing. If you take the top, I would say 18 starters, you can flip them all around. There's like a crazy amount of variability.
Yeah, I mean, listen, after the top 2, if I get any 3 of the next 15, I'll be happy.
Yep.
Listen, and I've seen this guy pitch in person. I know he got lit up, I think, yesterday, but it's spring training. I don't care. But this guy they paid him a ton of money. He's from Japan. Yamamoto is going to be a stud in the Major League Baseball. And I think if you want to grab him, you got to grab him early. But I have a great feeling that I think for sure he'll be Rookie of the Year. I said it here first. And I think he'll be a top 5 Cy Young guy. How about that? He'll be in the top 5 voting for the Cy Young in the National
League.
League.
I just want to acknowledge something. I said Blake Snell for least walks, and he walks a ton of guys.
That's what I said.
What I was looking at.
It's okay. No, it's okay. It's okay.
But what I was mixing up in my mind is he's basically unhittable.
Right. He gives up the most walks, but he seems to get out of it a lot.
Yeah. Tony says, "Awesome guys, thank you. You're welcome." Tony.
A man with no team is Blake Snell. It's
hard to argue with your next 5. I have Logan. I have George Kirby at 13. I dropped him down because of the lack of strikeouts, less than a strikeout per inning.
I have him 14.
So it's not that I don't like him. I have Zach Gallen 6 because I agree with Dan. I think he's a top 5 starter, potential to be top 3. I have Luis Castillo 7. I agree with you, but he strikes out more than Kirby. That's why I have him ranked above. Pablo Lopez, I have 8, but again, like I said, numbers 4 through 12, I could accept any argument that I have him misranked somewhere in there. Number 9, I put Tyler Glasnow there. If he stays healthy, I think he's the best pitcher on the Dodgers this year if he can stay healthy. His stuff is just crazy and unhittable. And then number 10, a guy I pumped up earlier and you guys were shocked, but I still think it. I have 10. I have Tarek Skubal, the kid from Detroit.
Sure. I have him 22. He's ranked high, but
I think his stuff is just filthy. And if you look at what he did when he came back from his injury at the end of last year, 2.8 ERA, 9.9 WHIP, over a strikeout per inning, 80 innings pitched, 102 strikeouts. He gained 2 to 3 miles per hour on his velocity coming back from the injury. If he sustains that, it's crazy. If he can throw 160 innings, which is what they're hoping to get out of him, I think he has top 6 potential.
All right. Now, Uncle Ted says Ross's camera angle is making me seasick. Ross, we'll see what we can do, or just continue to torture Uncle Ted. Sometimes we have, we're
I'll
in
try to
leagues
work on
together.
it when we're off camera. Max Fried,
for doing
who's a Southern California kid. He's in my top 18.
Yep. I have him 17.
Yeah, you have him 17, Casey.
Well, I have
Logan Webb. I have in the top
injuries,
18.
20.
I have Logan Webb 14. Yep.
Logan Webb,
19.
and I are on the same page. What do you guys think about Freddie Peralta?
Fastball Freddie. I have him ranked 12th. I think.
Ooh, really?
Oh my gosh. I think he's going to anchor that staff there. And if you look at his numbers from last year, 165.
Have you ever rostered him?
Yeah, he's frustrating as hell to own. 165 innings, 210 strikeouts with a 1.12 WHIP. Like, those are top 15 numbers to me. He only got 12 wins.
Here's what I don't like about Peralta. I like him as a pitcher. I have him ranked 20. What am I ranked? 28th. And the reason is I feel like he's the Kyle Schwarber of pitchers. He's going to dominate for certain periods, but he's also just going to destroy you in certain numbers, especially if you're playing a head-to-head. Well, actually, in head-to-head, he might be even more valuable because some weeks he's going to dominate. Right. But he's so variable that he drives me crazy. And having rostered him before, you guys know the story. If somebody's burned you, you're going to rank him lower.
Sure.
He's still way up there in terms of names, but I have a guy like Yuri Perez. I like him a lot more than Freddie Peralta. I think he's got huge upside.
I think the Uri is that last year he had the old, okay, I'm only throwing 110 innings and then I'm being shut down, which drove me nuts.
90 innings, yeah.
90, yeah, I mean.
Sure, but what's your worry about that? That he can't do it?
I mean,
fatigue,
guys,
like the first time he goes
90 innings and you're 20-something years. Seriously? I mean, 20, that guy's not going to deserve a spot on my team.
He's only 20 right now, but
I know, but
I think he's going to be great.
Come on, 90 innings.
I mean,
Ted can throw 20 innings in his sleep.
All right, so Casey has him 22nd. I have him ranked 21st. Where do you have him ranked, Ross? Is he outside of the top 30 for you?
Which one?
Yuri
Perez.
One are we on?
Yuri Perez.
Perez, I have around 20. I have around 29, 28. He has filthy stuff. It's just the innings pitched last year drove me nuts. So until he shows me that he's going to be like a pitcher that pitches every 4th or 5th day,
he didn't come up till the middle of the year.
He was 19 years old.
He also didn't come up till the middle of the year. I mean, he's not going to pitch that.
When Bob Gibson was 19 years old, he was pitching 300 innings.
Thanks, Grandpa.
Comparing to Bob Gibson. Come on.
All right, so here's. I agree. Like, I have George Kirby ranked 13th because of the Ks. Because of the lack of strikeouts. I have the same with Logan Webb. I think they have great floors, but they don't have great ceilings. And if I'm looking for that.
That's why I have them lower also. Yeah.
I have Max Fried ranked 17th, but I think he's another one who's perennially underrated, and he could be up in the top 10 by the end of the year. He just is, I mean, he's one of your Southern California boys, and he's awesome.
I have him ranked 24, but I could see him higher, and I actually think he's very similar to Kirby. Maybe even higher.
He's Kirby, but safer to me.
I see it the other way around because
Blake Snell, I put him at 19th. At 20th, I put Cole Ragans, the kid from Kansas City, who's
great stuff,
who's lights out. I mean, and he's throwing 100 miles an hour already in spring. I just think, and he's left-handed. He's a strikeout artist. The next pitcher I have is Jesus Luzardo, same kind of idea. I love that kid. This is kind of, once I got into the 20s is where I allowed my ageism, my bias to take over. So then it's Yuri Perez. Then it's Yuri Perez. Then it's Grayson Rodriguez. Because when he came back from the minors, if you look at his numbers after he was the 13 starts after the minors, 2.58 ERA with a 24% strikeout rate. Like, that's crazy good. And Baltimore is a team that's going to be playing important baseball. Bobby Miller, the kid from LA, the Dodgers, is awesome. And people didn't see how good he is. He's getting forgotten because of Yamamoto and Glass now at the top of that rotation.
And Bueller's coming back. And I mean, their pitching staff is
he's going to be their number 4 starter going against other teams' number 4 starter.
They don't even have Ohtani pitching, and their rotation is ridiculous.
Next year they have Ohtani pitching. It's going to be more sick.
Yep.
I really like the kid from Cleveland, Tanner Bybee.
I love Bybee.
His numbers last year were really, really good. Mitch Keller from Pittsburgh just signed that big extension. He proved to be their ace, threw a lot of strikeouts. He had 4 bad starts there in July, August that crushed his ERA for the whole season. Otherwise, he would have been a top 10 or 15 pitcher. So there's a lot
like
of
Helen Keller. He's great.
The ones I think you get the value are after that. Like, you can get Carlos Rodon pretty cheap now. And if he returns, like last year, he had shoulder issues. If he's healthy this year, like, you're talking 230 to 250 strikeouts.
He could be a top 5 starter if he.
How can you even bring his name up in this segment? I mean, he's not even close to the top 30, and I would never draft that guy if you paid me. He's horrible, Casey. Carlos Rodon is an embarrassment.
That's where we're different, right?
And look, this is
I want to mention a name to you guys that was like last year. I just fell in love with this pitcher. He was great, and he had some great stuff, and he had some great games. Justin Steele. It's just no one's mentioning him.
Yeah. Right.
Am I missing something?
No. The kid, I mean, he's pitched really good 2 years in a row. I don't necessarily trust somebody who throws 91 miles an hour with a fastball in Chicago when the wind's blowing out. But look, he's proven it wrong. He's had a 3.2 ERA or less, I think, 2 years in a row. Not a big strikeout guy. I don't like the Cubs this year,
that's fine. I'm just saying, Justin Steele.
I feel the same way about Bryce Miller, the other kid in Seattle who's really good.
Yeah, but
he's like the 5th starter there. I mean,
I feel like there's certain people who we think of them as these journeymen because we've seen them in certain seasons where they weren't that good, and then they put it together, and we continue to ignore that they're doing well. And Justin Steele to me is one of those guys. He's really put it together, and he's a solid pitcher. That being said, I don't have him in my top 30. But he's close, very close. I would say
somebody else who's
good. Well, I was going to say this is going to sound like a homer pick, but I don't really actually make those if you know me well enough. But I think Tanner Bybee has a chance to jump into the top 10 next year. I really like what I see out of him. And if you're thinking that
next year or this year,
I think when we draft next year, we're going to be talking about him in the top 10. So I think this year he could be a top 10 pitcher. I'm just saying I think he could be ranked that way next year because he's going to put up those numbers. But I don't actually like the rest of the Cleveland staff for the most part. I have Shane Bieber as a bust. I have Tristan McKenzie as a bust. I've seen Tristan McKenzie pitch, and he just is not putting it together. And Shane Bieber is sliding backwards. Tanner Bybee, though, strikes me as the guy who's the way Shane Bieber was. And I think if he puts it all, I think he can put it all together. Go ahead, Case.
Hunter Green. Let me ask you about Hunter Green. Strikes out a lot of people, gives up a lot of home runs. But
the weird thing
maybe
about
this
Hunter
year's the year he put it together.
And I hope he does because his stuff is electric. But the thing I don't understand about Hunter Green, here's this big right-handed pitcher who just throws like straight fire and has a devastating breaking ball, but righties crush him. Right-handed pitch, like you would think it would be the lefties who would crush him. I don't understand. I would have to learn why, but until he learns command and control a little better, I can't put him in my top 30. But you're right. And I hate that he's pitching in Cincinnati for like half his starts potentially. That always scares the crap out of me. But I love watching the kid pitch. Same with Nick Lodolo. I mean, he was hurt all last year, but this is a guy with electric stuff who throws gas. And if he can figure it out, like the problem is once you get past the top 20 to 25 pitchers, it is more well, if they put it together sort of scenario, you're looking for lottery tickets. Because I could easily see both of them with a 4.6 ERA. It's like Dylan Cease, right? 2 years ago, Dylan Cease, we were thinking is the next kind of ace, the Spencer Strider before Spencer Strider hit the scene. And then this past year, his ERA and WHIP were bad. I mean, he still struck out 220 guys. Right. But it's that command and control stuff.
Uncle Ted says Screwball and Glass Arm, meaning Glass now, are both IL queens. They have been on the IL.
I agree. That's why when I mentioned them, I said if they stay healthy, right?
But I'm betting on Tyler Glass now this season. I have him ranked 13th because his upside is so massive. But listen, it's a scary bet. I totally understand. Yeah. Bobby Miller, by the way, Case. I totally agree with you. I think he's him, Yuri Perez, Tanner Bybee,
Grayson Rodriguez.
Yeah, I'm actually not as high on Grayson Rodriguez or Hunter Green just because they're not showing as many signs. Those three pitchers, Yuri Perez, Bobby Miller, and Tanner Bybee, they pitched well last season, and they're showing that they have that kind of upside. So I have them ranked higher. My back end guys actually have some older dudes, though I do have Yamamoto in there. I'm interested to see how he does. I have him ranked 26th, but I have Joe Musgrove, Chris Sale, and Sonny Gray are in my top 30.
So
I also like.
Where do you guys rank Walker? Walker Buehler's coming back. I mean, he's.
I have him as a value pick.
I have him as a value pick.
I have him as a sneaky value pick because from what I've heard, they're not planning on bringing him back for a couple months, and so because they don't.
But you're going to want him on your team when he's back,
right? But it's his second Tommy John on the same arm.
Yep.
I don't know how many who've come back from 2 and been devastating again.
Okay, what do you think about Joe Ryan, the fireball pitcher in Minnesota?
I have him just outside my top 30.
I have him as
really
a value
like
pick.
him. Yeah.
I have him as a value pick.
I have him 20. I have him 25.
Yeah.
Chris Babbitt's another inning burner. This guy throws innings. I mean, this guy, all he does is
but I don't know how valuable that is in
innings.
Fantasy. To me, he's similar to Jordan Montgomery, right? That he hasn't signed yet either, but he's talked about as this huge free agent who can really help a team. And in real baseball, that's great. If your 2, 3, or 4 guy can throw 200 innings, but Bassett has had some good outings, but the whole season, he's more of a vanilla pitcher to me. He doesn't kind of
get strikeouts. He gets strikeouts.
I mean,
no, I'm not saying he's not valuable. I'm just saying.
But I think an inning. I think an innings eater who strikes out close to a batter an inning is totally worth it because you can get him for such. That's why I have him as a value pick. You can get him way late in the draft, and he just fills out your numbers. I'm not saying he's the greatest pitcher, but I think this is to Ross's point. He's going to fill out your numbers a lot. I have Bassett as a value pick. I have Joe Ryan as a value pick. And I think Joe Ryan has more upside. And then I have Walker Buehler as a value pick because even though he's coming back later in the year, you're going to want him up. Buehler. Is there anyone named Fry? Where do you guys have Mitch Keller? I think you mentioned him.
I have him at 26th.
Okay. And Ross, what about you?
Outside of the 30, he got lit up last year in the later months. He started out the year great, and then he just got lit. Until he shows me more consistency, I'm not drafting.
Yeah, I get that, but I like if I see a pitcher profile. That's true. Yeah. But if I see a pitcher profile where they pitched really well for about 3 months and then they fell off a cliff, and it's the first year that they're really putting together a whole season. I'm intrigued because I think all they need to do is get over that hump and work through it. I don't like Mitch Keller that much in terms of a fantasy pick because of where he plays, but I could see him putting up a good year.
Yeah. But if he's my number 4 or 5 starter, I like it.
Sure. Meanwhile, I mentioned Sonny Gray. Go ahead. Yep. Go ahead.
I'm going to name 4 pitchers that the start. These are 4 starting rotation for a Major League Baseball team. You tell me what team it is. Are you ready? Case? Ken Waldichuk, Joe Boyle, Mason Miller, J.P. Sears.
Mason Miller is Oakland, right?
Yep, they're all Oakland.
They're all Oakland.
That's the starting staff for Oakland, Casey.
That's the starting staff for Oakland. Wow.
And how many of those guys is Casey going to draft tonight? 0.
I'll tell you what, though, Mason Miller could be a deep value pick.
He has potential.
He could. This is making Ross laugh. It's true. He's just like cracking up. Listen, I mean, you got to find your bargain. You got to find your bargain somewhere. I totally cracked Ross up.
Okay. I mean, that's a great. If you know the 4 starters in Oakland to start the season,
I did know one of them.
That's all I got to tell you.
But the other ones, I had no idea. Guys, we talked a little bit about value picks.
You were like Oakland A's, and Casey and I were. Yeah.
Let's talk about sleepers. Value picks are people that we already know about, but we think they're going later in drafts. Sleepers are guys that a lot of people don't seem to be talking about or just aren't talking about enough. Ross, who do you got?
So I love this year, and he pitched them into the World Series. And if I pronounce his name wrong, I apologize. It's Brandon Pfaadt.
Pfaadt, yeah. Pfaadt. Yep.
Yeah, I love Brandon Pfaadt. I think he's the real deal. I mean, again, Zach Gallen. I mean, Arizona has some really good pitchers. They also got Eduardo Rodriguez from Detroit, who I love. I mean, so Arizona improved their team. Really, I like him. And also the Reds guy, they had him last year, and Casey and I talked about him a lot during the wire time, is Andrew Abbott. This guy is consistent. He strikes people out. His ERA is not bad, and his whip's pretty good. So I love Andrew Abbott. So I know I'm a homer with the Cincinnati Reds. I get it. But I feel that he's going to have a pretty good year in Cincinnati, and I like Pfaadt a lot. And Broxton Garrett of the Marlins, I feel no one pays attention to because he pitches in Miami. But this guy has great stuff. Unbelievable. Throws hard. Where do you guys have, Casey? You're really good with the minor leaguers. Where do you guys have the rocket thrower from Pittsburgh that was drafted first?
Paul Skeens.
Paul Skeens. Is he going to be in Major League Baseball this year?
Well, they already said they're going to start him off in the minors this season. They've already announced that. Who knows for how long? Okay. He is kind of, I don't know if anybody else remembers this, but he reminds me a little bit of when Max Scherzer first came out of college. He came up from, he was drafted by Arizona, Scherzer.
Arizona. He came up with a good memory.
Yep. I mean, Skeens has an electric fastball, but he strikes me as that, like, he hasn't had Tommy John surgery yet, but he throws so hard and his mechanics are kind of funky that it's just a matter of time. So that worries me with him. I could be 100% wrong because I said the same thing about Scherzer. He never did. Whereas Strasburg, everybody saw it coming, and what happened, it kind of happened to him a couple times.
Yeah, I compare more to Strasburg. Yeah,
I like him a lot. And in dynasty or deeper keeper leagues, I think he's a smart pick. In redraft leagues, I might throw a dart with him in the later rounds as a final starter or somebody to throw down on my bench if I have room there. But I need him to actually, because Pittsburgh's not going anywhere, and they are notorious for trying to manage payroll and manage prospect kind of whatever their clock is for their arbitration stuff. So I worry that he might be a victim to that, to make sure he's not a super 2 or whatever they call it.
Yep. I'm going to mention 3 guys that we've not talked about because we're talking sleepers. Ryan Pepio, Tampa Bay.
Ooh, I think that.
I think he's not getting talked about, but
part of the Glasnow trade. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think Tampa Bay has a way of getting the best out of people. Remember Jeffrey Springs? Jeffrey Springs.
Yeah, he's gone. He's gone. He left. He's no one Tampa Bay. He's gone.
This is the thing. When I'm gonna draft somebody, I will check and be like, oh, he's not on a team.
But yeah, he was unhittable before his Tommy John surgery.
And where did he come from? I just feel like Tampa Bay works their magic. So I like Ryan Pepio.
They really do. I mean, do you guys think, in all seriousness, do you think Tampa Bay is in the playoffs again this year?
I don't see why not. And to go back to Tampa Bay,
Famous Jay says, "Hey, gurus, good to see you."
I wish I was a guru, but I'll take the compliment. I think Chris Sale could be a super good value pick.
I have him ranked 29th.
In Tampa Bay.
I have him ranked 29th.
He's in the locker room, but yeah, he could be a great one. Yeah.
But who knows? Like I have him there. The other guy I have is Nathan Eovaldi. He's with glass arm and Scooble as Uncle Ted will say, he's an IL or missing starts waiting to happen. But especially if you're in head-to-head leagues, when he pitches, he's dynamite. Like he really is.
Did you say Chris Sale's with Tampa Bay? I thought he was with Atlanta.
No, Chris.
I mean Atlanta. I'm sorry,
okay.
Atlanta. You're right.
He's with Atlanta.
Sure.
But I said
still,
if he doesn't bring any TVs in the locker room, he's going to have a great year. That's what I said.
Yeah. Yes. Now a couple other sleepers I want to mention. 2 Kyles. Kyle Harrison of San Francisco. This guy, his stuff is electric.
He lost his command last year. It just depends if he can find it.
Well, I mean, but this is why I call him a sleeper. You know, nobody's really talking about him, but he had that stuff. So if he puts it together, he's going to be great. I also really liked Kyle Bradish in Baltimore. I feel weird recommending Baltimore pitchers, not used to that.
Yeah.
But he put up a great year, and nobody's talking about him. You know, maybe he's more of like a Justin Steele type. I don't know. What do you guys think of Bradish?
He stays healthy. Is he healthy right now? I thought I read something that he's not pitching right now, but maybe I'm wrong.
He's day to day right now, but they don't think it's anything significant.
Yeah. Okay.
He's not a big strikeout guy. I mean, I think he might have squeezed in a strikeout per 9. I'm not sure.
But you know, that's starting to eat innings. You know, you're looking for cheap alternatives that are going to help you in the long run.
I just looked it up. Bradish's outlook changed completely in mid-February when it was announced that he would begin the season on the injured list with a sprained UCL in his right elbow.
Ooh, sprained UCL. Okay.
Goodbye.
I take him off my sleeper list.
He got the PRP.
I thought he was hurt. I don't want to. I know he was hurt. I don't know what the extent was, but yes, Bradish is hurt. Okay, what's
Famous
your take
Jay
on?
Wants to know about Nestor Cortez.
Will Nestor Cortez of the New York Yankees break?
The man looks like Mario from Super Mario Brothers. Let's just put that out there, or that he should be delivering pizzas. But he gets by with deception, and that always worries me, especially in the AL East. I like him. I'm a Yankee fan, if you haven't watched before, so I don't have him anywhere near my top 30. But again, he's one of those. If he's number 4 or 5 in my fantasy rotation, I don't mind him. I just can't have him somebody I'm going to rely on.
What about Zach?
He started out with a flash. I mean, you guys remember when he started out, he was pitching lights out.
Threw from different arm angles and he changed speeds really well. I think
there
once
was people were wearing mustaches to the game. People had T-shirts, picture on it. There was mania of this guy. It was like Fernando mania. And all of a sudden, August and September, the guy fizzled away and gave up many runs in every appearance. But you know, if he get what he did in the first 2 months in New York last year, he'll be good. But I don't have any faith in him, Casey. None of them.
Famous Jay, you're fine that it was actually Nestor. I figured you knew that.
We followed you.
But here's what's funny is I read that as Willie Nelson Cortez, which I thought was hysterical. So,
Willie Nelson Cortez.
So it was
well
written in a way that confused me a little bit.
It's beautiful. Famous Jay says, I'm a Yankees fan too. Well, you're going to bond with Casey for that, and Ross and I will be against you, and we apologize. There are a couple other pitchers I wanted to mention. I'm curious what you guys think about Zach Eflin, Merrill Kelly, and who was the other guy? And Joe Musgrove. They feel like they're in a similar range.
Yeah.
I'm trying to place them.
Yeah, I mean, Merrill Kelly. Eflin, go ahead.
I was going to say Zach Eflin is Tampa Bay, by the way. You
guys both sounded like Pat just there.
He is Tampa Bay. His numbers last year were great. 16 wins, over a strikeout per inning, good, decent ERA, good whip. But I remember him too much. I think he was with Philadelphia, if I remember
good memory
before that.
Phillies.
And he was, living in Pennsylvania, I watched him get rocked a lot. But again, Tampa Bay finds a way to figure it out. But Tampa Bay doesn't let their pitchers go deep very often. And so I'm worried about the innings. But again, he's a great pitcher, finished in the top 25, I think, last year of starters and relievers in terms of total points.
He did, and he actually went fairly deep into a fair amount of games.
Who was the other guy you mentioned?
I mentioned Zach Eflin, Joe Musgrove, and Merrill Kelly.
Merrill Kelly, I never trust. Even though his numbers are decent, I don't have a real reason why. I just don't trust him.
Well, he's one of those guys that I also don't trust. I also don't trust him, but I decided, let me not bring prejudice to it. Let me look at the numbers. And I was like, his numbers are pretty good, So he's an innings filler at the back end of your roster if you want to grab somebody like him. Musgrove, I think, is different because he can actually put up dominant numbers.
Yeah, but he only pitched 97 innings last year, and he'd have to prove to me he's healthy. Because he's older, isn't he? How old is he?
Musgrove. I think he's 31. Yeah, 31.
So
yeah, but I mean, look, you got to remember, you only need him to be. Most leagues are redraft leagues. You only need him to be good this year.
that's
you know,
true.
if I'm drafting in a dynasty or keeper league, I want nothing to do with him. But go ahead, Ross.
Musgrove will probably be available on the wire during the season. I don't see him being like a guy.
If
Merrick is the 5th best starter in Arizona. So
these are all players that could end up on the wire, right?
Yeah,
that's why I was asking.
I think Efren, because the 16 wins, he'll probably get drafted kind of high. But again, I don't know.
And then he'll probably get cut. He'll probably get cut at some point.
Yeah.
Let's talk about busts before we run out of time, guys. Who are some guys you want to stay away from? I actually have Eduardo Rodriguez as one of my busts. He seems to have figured out how to pitch much better than he did before, but I just worry about him with a change in scenery. It seems like he found a groove. If he was still in Detroit, I'd be like, let's just stay there. But I worry that he's going to return to how he was with Boston.
I guess, and my bust is not somebody who I think is going to be a bust in terms of his performance.
A relative bust.
But I think it's a bust compared to where you have to draft him. Like in redraft leagues, he's going in the 3rd round is George Kirby.
Oh, wow. I have Kirby as a sleeper, even as highly ranked as he is.
See, and I have him as a bust because
I think he's going to end up a top 10.
You have to take him as a number 1 starter at this rate. True. And he doesn't get a strikeout per inning. Like, I think he doesn't get the strikeouts. Like, that would be like using a 1st round pick on an offensive player whose on base percentage. It's like, and his batting average is great. And maybe he scores runs, but he doesn't give you any power or RBIs. It's just, I'm not saying he's a bust. I think he's a top 20 pitcher in real life. I think he's going to be great for Seattle for as long as they keep him and then wherever else he goes. But for fantasy, if I'm not getting elite strikeout numbers or at least above average strikeout numbers, I don't want him to anchor my rotation.
I totally hear you. I just want to play little devil's advocate because if a guy like that starts to figure it out, and this happens sometimes where they start striking out a lot more guys.
Oh, if he figures it out and does that, then I'm wrong, and I'll gladly wear that.
See, that's the thing. His floor is so
if we're talking redraft league, I don't want to have him the year before he figures it out. I want to have him the year after he figures it out.
But in a dynasty or keeper league, this is the year I want to draft him because he's going to cost more next year. Who else do I have? I had to put him on my list just because of how he tortured me last year. But Jose Barrios will always be a bust.
I have him ranked 29th.
Oh my God. Well, listen, I understand that. You could get him in the back end of the top 30. I still think he's a bust. Ross, what say you about Jose Barrios?
Inning burner. He had great starts last year. I don't trust him at all. I remember when Dan had him and he complained about him a lot. So it's just, I don't think I would pick up Barrios. But he is an inning burner. If you need a guy that's going to pitch a lot of innings or you get points for innings pitched, he's not a bad pickup.
What were his
numbers? Famous Jay says Blake. Yeah, look up those numbers for us. Famous Jay says Blake Snell will look great in Yankee uniform.
I agree with you.
Hope the Red Sox.
He turned down the Yankees. They offered him
far.
Oh, did he?
So far.
Yeah.
That's
turned him down.
That's because he has, what's his face as his agent.
Who? Scott Boras.
Boras, only the best agent in the world.
The agent for almost everybody. Guys, is there anyone we did not mention that we really feel like we need to highlight here as a sleeper, or bust, value pick, or whatever?
Bust, Yu Darvish. I think Yu Darvish's career is almost over. Numbers are getting worse every year. I mean, I love when he came up. He has stuff that's filthy, but he walks too many people. And then all those players that we mentioned are hurt are all going to be busts. Kershaw, Scherzer, DeGrom, all these guys starting on the DL. I just stay away from all of them unless you can pick them up and put them on the IL. Fine, I get it, but don't draft them.
Well, let me say something, and actually this supports Ross's idea, but injured pitchers, they often don't even make it back. Injured hitters, usually they'll make it back, but injured pitchers often don't. Case, what were you going to say?
No, I think Scherzer should retire. I think DeGrom should retire. I mean, all these guys are
last year, 190 innings, 185 strikeouts, 3.6 ERA, 1.19 WHIP. So not bad at all. Not
No,
great.
he's not
right
bad.
right next to Chris Bassett, by the way.
Yep.
Luis Severino, famous Jay. I'm a big fan of him as a sleeper. I was just about to say him. He's been terrible and hurt the last few years for the Yankees. I think the Mets, maybe he'll rediscover it. I love the stuff. It's just a question of it's been arm and shoulder injuries for years. I don't know how quickly you come back from that. I was going to mention, I know we're Yankees fans, famous Jay, but I think Brian Bayo in Boston could be a sleeper. The guy has filthy stuff. He started to figure it out at the end of last year. If he carries that over, I think that could be huge for him. And Reed Detmers in Anaheim, or the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim. Great strikeout pitcher, struggled a little bit with command, but got like 170 strikeouts in 145 innings. A couple miles found on his fastball. He upped his velocity. It's another one you can grab late in the draft who could deliver you big returns.
All right, guys, we're going to wrap it up in a second. Next week, we're going to go over closers and relief pitchers, mostly just closers. We try to push closers back as far as we can in our draft previews because we know those roles change, but we're going to try to orient you as much as we can in mid-March as you get ready for your drafts. The first baseball games, I believe, are March 20th, so it's coming up soon.
From
March
Korea.
21st, Korea, yeah.
Yep, there's two
Korea,
games.
the Dodgers
games in
versus
Korea.
San Diego, I think. Yeah.
I thought it
Dodgers
was
in San Diego, yeah.
Yeah, Padres. So this is coming up soon. We'll get you oriented to closers. I also want to say for our viewers out there, we've begun to make some fantasy strategy videos that you can check out. These are just general ways to get better at the game. We had Tony asking some questions as a beginner. We've got beginners. We got intermediate strategy. We also are going to be developing advanced strategy as well. So keep an eye out for those. But now, guys, we have our draft starting tonight for our Dynasty League. I'm super excited about it. And, of course, it's that time of year when if I take Justin Verlander, he'll be terrible. And if I pass up on him, he'll kill me. It happens every single year. So let's all celebrate. Guys, it's a pleasure being with you. Case, Ross, you did a great job today, as always.
Chat with you later.
Hope you guys enjoyed the preview of us talking about starting pitchers, and good luck on your drafts. Please do send us questions as needed. We are here.